So, question is, if God has sent humans on Earth, then where does the evolution process fit in, or does it fit in at all?
Yeah, the Muslims argue about that a lot. A lot of Muslims feel that the concept of the evolution of species violates the Quran. And then there's others that believe it doesn't. You know what I'm saying? It's just like people that read the Bible. Some people read the Bible and say, yep, that story of creation is not an allegory or is not a parable. It is historical fact. It's about the origins of Homo sapiens. People read the Quran. The Quran says it uses allegory and parable. In my second book, Losing My Religion, I argue that the story of Adam in the Quran, I take as a parable. I don't think it has to do with the scientific origins of human beings. And I explain why I believe that, from other verses in the Quran that deal with the subject. You can disagree with me, you can agree with me, but the long and the short of it is that personally, I don't see the Quran arguing for or against evolution. Frankly, I know the theory. I think there are some flaws in it. Scientists are still working on it. But without a doubt, life forms on Earth have changed over time. Things that existed in the past no longer exist, and newer species have come into existence. The exact process for that, we really don't know. But from the Muslim perspective, however God made that come to be, whatever process he made that come to be, we're sure that he was the ultimate author behind it. But for me personally, I don't have a problem with scientists trying to understand the mechanism of how that gradual replacement of one species by another species by another species, how that took place. But I think we have a long way to go to understanding that. But personally, I don't agree with those who say that scientific theories that explain it are necessarily refuted by the Quran. I can see verses in the Quran that support the idea that human life has evolved. Doesn't say what the mechanism behind it was, but I'm sure God was behind it ultimately. And there are verses that, if you take them literally, certain stories in the Quran, if you take them literally and believe it's talking about science rather than just a story to help, a symbolic story to convey unto us meaning, then you could see it another way. It's really up to the individual. Does that help? Yeah, that's the way I do.
I believe there are 3 other people who want to ask questions. We'll cut it off after that. There's one person on this side. I believe there are 2 people here. So let's cover one person here, then we'll follow up with a question from this side, and then lastly, the lady.
Yes, brothers and sisters, friends, brothers and sisters, whatever. If you're tired, you can go. I know I think I want to. Please, you're not going to find. Muslim people are so hospitable and so sensitive about those things. Yes.
Hi. What partially influenced your decision to join Islam, from my understanding of your lecture, was that you were able to relate it to something personal, like an experience you had as a child. Do you think the Quran is general enough so that everybody can relate it in that way or in any other way to themselves or their experiences?
That's a good question. That's a good question. Is that your question?
Yeah.
The Quran general enough that everybody should be able to relate to it or be guided by it. Yeah, God only knows. God only knows. Well, to be honest with you, take my mom, for instance. My mom, very sincere person. Very truthful. A person who truly surrenders her life as best she can to God. She didn't get all involved in the theology of, Christology and things. It was beyond her. She was a brilliant woman, but it was beyond anything that she could do. She wasn't a theologian. She said, I'm not a theologian. I don't really fully understand things, but I know this God, I love God, and I believe in my religion. That's the way she explained it. It's my vehicle for experiencing God's grace, she used to say. Well, when I became a Muslim, that became quite a challenge for her. Are you following me, guys? And so we began discussing it, and she said, wow, this is, first she started arguing against me, and then she started saying, I have great respect for your religion, and it makes a lot of sense, and things like that. And she said, where can I go and experience your community? So I took her to the mosque in San Francisco. I took her to the ladies' community in San Francisco, because they didn't allow women in the mosque in San Francisco. I took her to the ladies' community. She experienced, I didn't know what she was experiencing. I can't go back there. This was in San Francisco. It's not like that in all communities, but at that time. They were imposing a particular sort of cultural version of Islam. I mean, cultural perspective of Islam. And my mother, had a horrible experience. Just utterly horrible. She said to me, Jeff, there is no room in this religion for somebody like me. I would be spiritually dead. I am so offended by what happened, that I would feel totally alienated. Are you following me? Now, my mom, but what I'm trying to say is, my mom was a very sincere seeker of faith. And she sensed that there were some things about Islam that were very compelling. But she wasn't like me. My mom wasn't the type to do everything on an intellectual level. My mom did things on an experiential level as well. And when she experienced the community, she became convinced that this religion, her religion might not be 100% perfect. Because every religion has a theology, has the human element involved in its interpretation and its implementation. And on that level, she felt that the Muslim community was not a better vehicle for her and her spiritual growth than the community she grew up and lived in. Are you following? A lot of times, a person's ability to perceive truth is based on their background, on their gifts God has given them, and on who they meet. Because, like the first time I experienced the Muslim community, my first introduction to Islam was a friend named Muhammad at Purdue University. He was from the Middle East. When I asked him about Islam, he told me that in Islam, it's bad for a man to commit adultery, but it's much, much worse for a woman to commit adultery. Now, if I ended up never becoming a Muslim because I thought that is the worst possible religion on earth, I really wonder who's to blame for that. Are you following me? So I'm saying there's a lot of things that goes into God guiding human beings, and I think He takes all of that into consideration. That's what I get from reading the Quran. But that's a whole other argument, and a lot of people disagree with me. But I'm going to write more about that in the future, and I've written about it in the past. But great question. I hope I answered it okay. Thank you.